I don't wanna waste what's left. And on we'll go, through the wastelands, through the highways, till my shadow turns to sun rays. And on we'll go, through the wastelands, through the highways, and on we'll go. Finding life along the way, melodies we haven't played. No, I don't want no rest. Echoing around these walls, fighting to create a song. I don't wanna miss a beat. And on we'll go.
All right, hey everyone. Good evening. Hope everyone had a good Thursday. So tonight on stream, we'll be taking a look at Cisco's modeling lab. I guess that's the best way to put it. Cisco Modeling Labs from Cisco. We'll be looking at its API, and we'll be digging a little deeper into there is a client library or an SDK we may take a look at, and also a utility, kind of like a utility library, where there's a like a CLI utility. So we'll take a look at that as well, since that was recommended actually by Hank Preston from the DevNet team. So we'll take a look at that, and yeah, hopefully we can. If anyone has questions, I realized in the last stream, the chat was empty on stream. Like, you couldn't see who was chatting. So I apologize. I could see it on my end, but you guys couldn't see it on yours. So, hey Ganesh, welcome back. Thank you for being here. Yeah, so if there's any questions you guys have, I'm honestly just going to be looking through the API, figuring out, some cool endpoints, and maybe trying to get a little workflow. So, make a hypothetical situation and combine a couple API calls to make a workflow. And then we'll take a look at the client library, which, for those that don't know, a lot of times developers will create what's called a client library, or sometimes called an SDK, where you can use it's like a library or a package that kind of helps abstract some of the underlying, whether it be API calls or low-level interactions with a piece of software or a tool. So just as an example, let me pull up the client documentation, the documentation for the client library that I found. If in CML, if you go to Tools and Client Library, it pops you over to this Viral2 API. And just so everyone knows, before CML was CML, it was actually called Viral. I don't know what exactly Viral stood for. That was a while ago. I used to, but CML obviously is easier. Cisco Modeling Labs, it's easier to remember. So that's why you see Viral as the name. So just to kind of give you an example, let's look at the examples. Right. This is kind of the initial setup, setting up the client library. So you would point it to the CML server, the username, password, whether you want to have SSL verification on. But this is like the meat and potatoes of this client library. So, last time we were looking at the API, and I was like, oh, we can get a list of labs, or we can create a lab. Well, client libraries allow you to do it programmatically, and using these methods, obviously once you like establish and create like a client object, which is an instance of the client library, we then can do things with that client library. So basically this is like a connection point to your CML lab. But you'll see here, we can create a lab, we can create nodes in the lab, we can name them, we can even add configurations to the specific nodes, right? So like in this case, we created a lab just called lab. We created an R1 variable, which is basically equal to creating a node called R1 using the IOSV. I don't know the parameter, but I imagine this is probably like a node definition. And then 50 and 100, I don't know without looking through the documentation. But you kind of get the idea, right? We created the node, and then we created a very basic config of just assigning a host name of router 1. Same thing with R2 and so on. So, but like towards the bottom here, you can see we can start the lab. We can do, the nice part is with any sort of client library is you have the power of the programming language that you're using. So in this case, and in a lot of cases with network automation, you're using Python. So here you'll see like we're going through doing a for loop, which basically we're just kind of going through the list of nodes, and we're printing out the node itself, the state it's in, and the CPU usage, right? And then, you can get down, looks like you can even get down to the interface level of these nodes. So you can get down to reading the packets. I don't know what the write packets would mean. I would think this means like, what am I trying to think? Receive and transmit. That's kind of what I'm reading, the read packets and write packets, but I may be wrong. But you can see like you could print, and one of my favorite libraries that I've recently used, it's called Rich. It's a Python library used to do all sorts of things through a terminal. It kind of creates a almost like a user interface, right? You could create a user interface using like shapes and colors, and it's a really cool library. It's just called Rich if you're interested. But you could use that library and like do like a pretty print and make this look really nice versus just like just printing the line. So just an example. And then lastly, you see like stop the lab, wipe the lab, or you could do things just remove a specific node from the lab. So these are all obviously examples, and like some of these parameters, like I kind of was guessing on these last two. You'd have to actually go into the documentation here and view the different packages, or the different modules and submodules. So, hey Randy, good night. Good night to you. I don't know if you're leaving the stream or if you're just saying like good night. But I hope you're doing good. Okay, so we'll maybe jump into this as well after we take a look at the API. And the other piece of other library I want to look at is this one is actually recommended by Hank Preston on Twitter, is CML Utils. So it's pretty straightforward. It's a collection of utilities for interacting with Cisco Viral/CML. Like I said, Viral was the original name, and they kind of, when they rebuilt CML or Viral, they renamed it to CML. So that's why you'll see both names. And you'll see this library actually has a good amount of stars on GitHub. And you see Hank's actually one of the maintainers. And then this maintainer, I don't know for sure, but I believe it's Joe Clark, who also works for Cisco. I don't know if he's specific to just the DevNet team or if he's like a more at-large architect, but either way, super knowledgeable guy. He has plenty of videos out on YouTube, interviews and whatnot. So super smart dudes here. And they created this library which basically allows us to interact with CML from a command line interface. So let me scroll down a bit so that way we can get like actual examples. So, and if this seems like I'm kind of like scrolling through this as if I know what I'm doing off the bat, it's just my way of kind of doing, like, this is the way I kind of look at new libraries or new tools, right? I always kind of start with an example, like something I can relate to, right? Because if you start with, okay, let me just get it set up, by the time you get it set up, you're going to be confused of why you even set it up. Or if you troubleshoot or it takes some effort, you're not going to want to, you're going to be just tired after setting it up. So I always like to look at the examples. So if we scroll down here, here's kind of the start of them. So you'll see that CML ls, if you're not sure, is basically listing the directories in Linux, right? It's a common Linux command, but in this case, it lists all the labs on the server. And let's see what else we have. CML ID lists the lab name and the ID associated with it. We actually did this, if you think about it, we did it last stream on Tuesday. We did it via an API call. If you remember, we got a list of labs, a list of IDs, and then we had to use the ID to do another API call to get more details, with the name and some other details about the lab. So there's actually some commands. It's not just it's not read only. So like in this case, CML up is where we can start the lab via this utility. CML nodes lists all the nodes in the lab. This is what I find interesting, and I'm excited if we do get to this part in the stream. I do want to look at this piece where you're using this command line utility to get to the console of the server, because of the network device, right? Because if you remember last time we looked at I don't think we looked at it as much as I may have just put something on Twitter about it, is the breakout tool, where you have to download like a piece of software and it allowed you to connect to multiple consoles of the devices at once versus like clicking through each device. So if this utility allows you to do like just a basic command to connect to a device and it throws you right into the console, that'll be awesome. Okay, CML down, that one's pretty straightforward. CML use a specific lab, so you could put the lab name and then look at the nodes. Generate the PyATS testbed. You guys know, if you're in the last stream, I was super pumped about seeing that API endpoint. Here, using this tool, you literally just put in CML generate PyATS and it'll create a testbed for us. And then you could even do like ad hoc commands, right? You could do it to, I'm assuming this is going to be the name of the device and then the actual command you want to run. So let's see, okay, hold on though. Using the same PyATS framework, viral utils can execute CLI show commands on nodes within a lab. Oh, interesting. So I wonder if you have to generate a testbed. I would assume you have to, because that's what PyATS and PyATS uses to and like establish the network inventory. So you probably have to generate the testbed, and then I imagine this command here feeds off of the testbed to look for the specific device name in the testbed, and then you put in the command. These nodes do not have to be externally reachable or have an IP connectivity. This is a great way to test operational aspects of a completely isolated topology. Before using the command, you must install PyATS. Nice. Okay. This is definitely something I'm going to try out as well. Creating an Ansible inventory. That's awesome. I imagine there's probably an API call for that as well. We just didn't look at it last stream. Okay, and then NSO as well. This will be another stream in itself. for the DevNet Expert exam, I have to look at NSO. I know a little bit about it, but I don't know enough about it. So before we even try to generate an NSO inventory, we have to actually learn a little bit more about NSO. But pretty neat. Cool. Pretty good documentation as well. I mean, this is just kind of pulled from the GitHub repository, so we'll take a look at that. All right, let's get into it. Let me start my little music here. All right. I don't think my lab is running. No, it's not. But we'll get it started. I'll just start it just in case we need it. Simulate, start lab. All right, so you remember from last stream, the little yellow circle means that everything's kind of booting up still, which is expected. So we'll go back to the dashboard. So let's do this. Let's create a lab. And what we'll do is we'll use only API calls. So my thought is, let's start with the basics, right? Let's go with doing everything via API calls using Postman. And then what we'll do is create some Python scripts, and which will utilize the client library and the CML Utils library, right? So, and I don't know what order I want to do. I'm thinking I'll do CML Utils first because we're kind of slowly moving. I want to slowly move from basic API calls, which obviously, Postman, if you guys didn't know, let me just do this one. Postman actually can generate code for you. And let me see. Okay, of course it doesn't want to do it now. Let me see, it's in the documentation section. Code. There we go. Yeah, so Python, there's really two, there's a bunch of libraries, but the two popular ones are request and HTTP. We'll use the request library since that's the most popular, but, or like what I've used, I guess. Shouldn't say it's the most popular just because I use it. But you'll see here, like, we can take what we do in Postman and easily transform it into a little snippet of code. So you'll see the headers, payload, what kind of requests we're making, and then it will print the text out. So you literally can copy and paste this into a Python file or a text editor IDE, and then save it as a Python file and run it against, with an interpreter. So I was initially thinking we would just spend some time with VS Code with the request library and practice. I think that's a waste of time, especially if there's a client library and like that utility library for the command line utility. We don't need to write scripts, and we've in past streams we've already done this sort of thing where we've created APIs, we've did API test calls, so. But just wanted to show you that this is here, so that way if you do follow along or you do use Postman for anything else, just know that you can do code snippets, and you can do things besides Python. Ruby, PHP, Node.js, JavaScript. I mean, it's all here. So, but we'll close that. And that, by the way, is Postman recently. I mean, I don't know how recent, but over the past year or so, they've changed around. They've moved some things around, which is why you'll see me kind of guess on the location of some of this stuff. Okay, so first let's get authenticated. So if you remember from last time, it's just /authenticate. Put in the username password as in the body, and here we go. So we have our bearer token. This is one way to authenticate to an API. Next part with Postman is instead of like copying it and opening up the environment variables like right on screen like I did last time, you can now right click and do set because we're in the CML personal environment, you can kind of see it on the stream. It shows the different variable names. So in this case, we're just updating token. So I'll select token. So now this has taken precedence. This is the new value for the token variable. So now if we get our labs, same lab ID because we didn't create anything new, and then just to verify, see it's in a started state. So let's go ahead and create a lab via an API call. Let's set up a new lab, and we can do that with labs. So you'll see here, create a new lab. The title for the newly created lab, if not provided, a title will automatically be generated. We don't need that. Or we don't want them to auto-generate a title. So we will put in a parameter as for title. So let's see. Okay, the parameter is just called title, and I guess this is just a string. So let's go ahead and because it's basically this call except the post, I'm just gonna do a copy paste. And we'll just rename it. We'll call create lab and change this to a post. And in the parameters field, the key was title. The value is I don't know if we need the quotes or not, but I would assume we do. We'll call this Postman Lab. We may not. All right, we'll see what happens. I'm a little nervous about the quotes, and I'm a little nervous about the space. But let's see. Okay, state is defined on core, 200 okay. That's a good thing. Node count 0, link count 0, a new ID. Everything looks good. Let's go to get the labs. And we should see one more ID pop up. And we do. Cool. And you'll, oh, I just refreshed it, but it was already. Okay, so we did not need to include the quotes. So what I'll do is I'll actually delete the lab. And we could have did that through the API as well. I don't want to go too crazy and like test out every endpoint. So there's some things I'm going to try via the API, and other things like deleting the lab, I'm just going to do through the GUI. So we'll take out the quotes. I didn't think we needed them. But yeah. And just as a heads up, you know, you'll notice that whenever I type things down here, so like foo bar, you'll see that there are, it was added to the end of the URI here, right? So the reason, I guess I can delete that. Basically, what this is called is it's called a query parameter, right? And so that's kind of why it says query params right here, but I just want you to know that through Postman, you know, you can do it like this. It's pretty easy, right? Key value. But if you're writing it out, like let's say in a curl script or something, you would have to write it out at basically a question mark and then the key and then equal sign and then whatever the value of that key is, right? Angel's here. Just to know, is CML part of CCNP or CCIE topics? Can't find it. Yeah, so it's not actually part of any of the. I don't know. You may have to know it for like the associate, just as like what it is, but you don't have to know how to like interact with it, create labs or anything. So all we were doing tonight is I got it spun up over the weekend, and so last stream on Tuesday. We kind of just looked at it at a high level, and then tonight we're going to interact with the API and then the client library, the Python client library. So it's more or less just kind of just chilling and figuring this out, because ultimately I will be using CML to do a lot of the studying for the DevNet expert. So for example, part of it is like getting telemetry data, right? And then configuring the device using Yang models, right? So doing all of that, you can do that on like a CSR, and all of that is possible by creating like a lab of just, full of CSR routers. So I will be using it, but not like in a way where it's like test information, if that makes sense. So, yeah. But if you have any questions about it, I'll try to answer them the best I can. Okay, so we need to recreate this. There we go. Let's go ahead and send this again. Okay, so now it has a new ID and a new created date. Everything looks good, and it's here. Okay, cool. So we created a new lab. What else do we want to do with this lab? Start the lab. Now there's no reason to start it. We got to create some nodes. Create a link. Create interfaces. No, we don't need that. Import. Add a node to the specified lab. Let's do that. Interesting. Specify true to automatically create predefined number of interfaces. I would think we'd want that. Maybe not. Okay. All right, so let's see here. All right, so we got a little bit of work to do for this one. So we have to, a query parameter is lab IDs required. So because, where's Postman? We have the lab ID here, right? And you could obviously also get it from the GitLabs API call. But what we'll do is we will copy paste, and we'll call this one create lab nodes, or create nodes in lab. Okay. And what was the API? What was the endpoint? /labs /lab ID. So we'll say /lab ID /nodes. Okay. Interesting. It says it's also the parameter, but I don't think it seems silly we would have the lab ID twice. But all right, so yeah, labs, lab ID, nodes, labs, and then this is the lab ID I just copied, and then nodes. Okay. I mean, it says, oh no, it just says parameters. Whatever. We'll leave it out for now. If we get an error, I'll add it in as a query parameter, using the question mark at the end. But let's first do schema. Okay. So X, Y, I think are the positioning. Oh, you know what? I bet. Oh man, where'd it go? The examples. So remember when I was like, what? I don't know what these numbers are. I bet these are the coordinates. So you'll see here in the API call, it requires coordinates for X and Y axis of where you're going to place it in the lab. So. Okay. So how about that, instead of, because there's a lot here, right? And instead of me figuring out, okay, well, because a lot of this is already defined, right, in the node and image definitions. And then let's do this. Let's get a list of nodes that are in an existing lab, right? And then we will we'll create some. Let's see. And we'll do this. We'll change this to get, and we'll say get nodes in lab. All right. Get, and then we want to actually get the nodes in this lab. Assuming that's the call. N0 and oh, great. Okay, that doesn't help. Let's see. Get the topology. I don't want the topology. I don't need the state. Nodes. Add a node to the specified lab. Oops. Get details of the specified node. All right, maybe let's try that. What's that do? Node slash and then the node ID. All right, so we'll just say N0. I hope it gives us a little more information. Ah, there we go. Perfect. Right. So like, this is like one good example of get an example of, so if you're ever trying to do like a post or a put, put's a little different because that's updating, but with a post, if you're creating a new object, it's actually better to get, obviously the documentation should provide a schema, which this did, but like, you know, instead of throwing out like astronomical numbers, like for example, X, Y, I have no idea the numbers they're using, right, for their XY coordinates. Like, how big is this plane that we're trying to put the devices on? So this at least gives me an idea. N0 is iOS v0, so it's the iOS v image. So if I go over here and open up this lab, I bet it's this one here, right? So you can kind of get an idea of where it's at in the lab. And so here it says negative 750 and then negative 150. So I imagine, you know, your 0's up here, I guess, since it says it's negative 7. Well, no, it was X. Well, X was negative 750, right? Yeah. And then Y is negative 150, right? So Y negative 150 is probably starting over here, just going backwards. And then negative 750, I imagine, that's why I said like the point might be up here, because, well, no, because it'd be down. Negative 750 is from the top, negative 150 from the mid. No, I don't know. Either way. Let's just keep moving. So I'll take all of this. So this gives us a good definition for an iOS v image. And then I'll just... oh no, I already have VS Code up. Actually, I'll just pull up a new window. That way, because this is kind of throwaway material. All right, so we'll create an iOS v image, and let's just try to find the CSR image. How about that? So all I did here was just switch this N0 to N1, and there's a CSR image. and you'll see negative 200, negative 150. I won't bore us again with the details of that. Trying to figure out the coordinates. But as reference, the CSR is over here. So negative 250. So this is negative 750, negative 250. 0 must be over here. I bet 0, yeah. 0 is kind of over here then, I bet. Okay. Enough with the guessing, though. So, what are we doing? We're trying to create the node. And let's see here. Add a node to a specified lab. Populate interfaces. I kind of want to set this to true because I don't want to populate interfaces equals true. Because I don't really want to create the individual interfaces. I think that would get too tedious. And I'd like to move on to, you know, kind of move the stream along to the client library and the CLI utility. So, okay, so what do we have now? We have raw, we'll call this JSON. So we're gonna create so this is a good example, right? Hopefully you guys can see it. Yeah. So over here on the left is what you need to create a new node, and then over here on the right is what we got from gathering or getting the nodes from an existing lab, right? So you'll notice that there's a couple things. You know, the ID is, you know, one thing that I can't create, right? That's something that the system creates for the node. It's a unique value that we can use to gather more specific data. And you'll see there's no ID required here, right? So we're actually going to take the ID out of our body. And then you also see X, Y, label, configuration, no definition. So it's just in a different order, but you'll see configuration, no definition, image definition, RAM, CPU, CPU limit, data volume, boot disk, tags, right? So everything's there. It's just X, Y are down here and instead of being at the top. The only other thing we have to remove is the data, because we don't need the data key. That's something that comes with once the node is defined. All right, so we have that. We can get rid of that bracket because that was used for data. So now, fix the indentation. We have, you know, our curly braces. We have each of the required fields, and that's about it. The only thing we got to do is change. Actually, this will be interesting because I'm not going to change the location, so that way we can go between the two. So let me pop that up. Let me pop this up. So you'll see the CSR is in this location, right? So technically, the CSR should pop up in basically the same spot, okay? Because we're adding it to the other lab. All right, so I think we're good. Go ahead and send it in. ID N0, 200, okay. Okay. So I'm gonna just save this call. We'll go over here. There it is, sure enough. Well, it's not in the right spot though. Let's see. No. Let's see. And the ID is N0, so what we'll do is create, we will check the lab, we'll check the coordinates of this node. Because remember, we put in 200, what was it, 200, 150? Yeah. So let's just double check where it's at. It says negative 200, negative 150. Oh, I'm an idiot. It's because you can do this. You can move it around. So, like I said, I don't know how big the plane is. What's this button? Oh, center view. Okay, so we'll center view. Oh, this, you know what? This might only center view based on the elements on the screen. Whatever. Okay, you got the idea though. You get the idea. All right, so we have that node, and let's create one more node. How about that? And remember, we have the populate interfaces equals true on. So what that should do is automatically create the numbered interfaces. So at the CSR, it might be like Ethernet 1 through 4, right? All right, let's create one more using our definition here. Remember, because an IOSV image, boom. We'll take care of that bracket. We'll take care of the ID and the data. We'll highlight all this and say boom. Okay. So what this will do is we should see this node pop up to the left of the CSR. So going back to, it should pop up. I know, like I said, with moving everything around, it's confusing, but it should pop up like over here, if I had to guess. But let's go ahead and just send that in there. N1, perfect. There we go, perfect. Okay, so let's do one other thing here. Just trying to think. You know what? I won't do that. I was gonna try to. I was gonna create a link and build the link between these two, using an API call. But you know, with that, you have to think. You have to get all the interfaces, create the link, and then verify that the link's there. Instead, I'm just gonna draw it, and I just so because I don't think I've done this on stream. Whenever it's brand new lab, you got play, which obviously would boot the device up. But if you need to connect the devices, you use this blue, it looks like chain links. You click and hold, and then you see this little line pop up, right? And I guess it just lights up any devices that you can connect to. And whenever you're on a device, it turns green. And you'll see, because we had the populate, what's it called? Populate interfaces? What's that query parameter called? Yeah, populate interfaces equals true. Because we had that true, it automatically created all these interfaces for us. And I'm starting to think, because I don't think it automatically creates that many out of the box. Let me just take a quick peek here. I'm thinking it created like way more than it should have. I'm gonna check with the, because this lab I created just by going to add nodes and dragging and dropping everything on. Because what I'm gonna do is, come on, 03, 04. Okay, so 00, 01, 02, 03. Interesting. Okay, so off the bat, this one only has 4 interfaces. Whereas whenever I said auto populate true, this has 15 interfaces. Oh man. Okay, how about this? Hold on. Show IP interface brief. Yeah. Oops. So there's 4 out of, and this is just if I drag and drop. But if we do populate interfaces equals true, it looks like it maxes it out, because that device has like, well, I guess it says 15, but really it's 16 interfaces if you count 0, 0. Yeah. Let's do something here. Let's create one without that query parameter in it. And we just have to change the coordinates so they don't overlap. The label we'll just call ISV1, and everything else looks good. Send. All right, ID's N2, and yep, negative 250, negative 500, negative 750 with the coordinates. Okay, so let's see what we have here. That one has 15 as well, and I set that to false. Maybe it changes? I don't know. Either way. We'll create this link. We'll create this link. All right, so all these devices are together. Toggle link style. Okay. Okay. So one more thing I want to do before we jump is let's do. I don't want to save that. Well, I'll save it. Screw it. Postman Lab. All right, we created the lab. We'll save it. Fine. Last thing I want to do before we start looking at the client library is let's take a look at starting a lab. Okay. And I believe that was, let's see. Yeah, we haven't even jumped. The crazy part is, right, is we haven't even like, we're just at like, I would call this the management, the lab management step. Like we haven't even started the lab. We haven't, like, you can collect the interface, or I'm sorry, the configuration from the lab. You can manipulate the lab using link conditioning. You know, obviously we've talked about adding and removing nodes. You can create new node and image definitions. So, I mean, you think about it, you can probably get some sort of automation to where you check and find the latest software release for a specific device, you know, in this case, probably a CSR, right? And then you somehow get it to where you can do an API call, find the latest release, and then somehow download that image to, like, you know, a server, probably the same server that this CML's hosted on, and then you could create an image definition, because the definitions are already provided. We looked at last stream. You basically provide a YAML file, right? So if you wanted to stay to the latest and greatest and verify, like, okay, the latest image that Cisco has, it runs everything right. You know, throw a PyATS test script at it, and you're good. So, but yeah, it's. But like I said, I don't want to go through every single endpoint. I just want to go through the ones that are, you know, get a lab up and running, and then, because the configuration standpoint is really going to be all up to the user. Because, like, if I want to lab OSPF, and, you know, let's say you work for a service provider where you guys do BGP, MPLS, you're not going to care about OSPF. So, like, that's where the labs, like, you can customize the labs however. So I'm not going to dive into, like, well, how do I manipulate the configuration or whatnot. And I'm sure you already have your own configuration standards as well. Okay, so let's start the lab. How about that? Start the specified lab as a simulation. So it's just literally /start. And what we'll do is, let's see if I can somehow pull it up here. see. Okay, so this one says on, right? So Postman Lab should turn to on whenever I get this ready. And I think it's a post request if I remember right. Or it's a put, I'm sorry. Put. I'll just reuse this. Change this to put. Change this to start lab. Okay. And we'll just say, let's start this specific lab /start. And I guess we're good. I guess that's it. All right, so let's go to dashboard. I'm ready on 3. I'm gonna hit it and we'll see if this thing starts up. 1, 2, 3. There it is. Flip to on. And just so you guys can see, I got a 200 OK success response body. So now if we go over here, sure enough, you got it all. Isn't that awesome? Like, I know, like, if you're following along, you're probably like, okay, you didn't have to like spell it out, but like, think about it. Within an hour, we created a lab, added nodes to the lab. We didn't create links between the nodes, but we got everything. Oh, excuse the server. My server's probably just like about fried at this point. You can see it. You can see it's like maxing out now. How about this? We also, let's figure out how to stop it. Yeah, I figured that. Just /stop. Okay. Watch this. All right. So we will start that. You'll see how the CPU's floating around 80%. Watch this. Just do /stop. There it goes. I don't know how well you heard if you heard, but my server started spinning up. It sounded like a jet plane about to take off. So pretty neat though, right? I'll just save this as a new one. Stop lab. Oh, I gotta create it or assign it. CML. Okay, but pretty sweet, right? The nice part is like, yes, obviously it's very straightforward. I think you almost could teach, I mean, you could teach a non-programmer to kind of be able to read this and understand, right? But the nice part is, Angel says probably that'd work. Yeah. The nice part is that API calls, I mean, I'm sure, you know, if you've heard anything about like kind of software these days, you hear like Docker, Kubernetes, microservices, you know, on and on and on. You know, the way that these microservices talk to one another, you know, the front end talks to the back end, and the scaling services, like how each of these all the little microservices that make up the front end, back end, they talk via, you know, an API, right? So it's really neat that, you know, APIs are kind of, I don't want to say new to networking, but like the fact that you could write code to, let's say you write a Python script and you want to propose a configuration change. You could literally put this into a, you know, like a CI/CD pipeline, or if you don't want to get too fancy, you propose a script and you literally run the configuration against your lab. Well, you know, in the past, you may have to set up the lab manually, like drag and drop, move the nodes around, link them all up, configure the IPs and whatnot. But with an API, you can you programmatically spin it up. You literally can create a script that all it does is it starts and stops your lab. And you can see it's not just like you have to have a pre-built lab. You literally can build a lab with the API just all in itself. So pretty neat stuff. And there's obviously a bunch of things I didn't touch on, like configurations. I'm sure there's one to set an initial bootstrap configuration. So like this is awesome. And they don't, and you can't make it any easier. So basically what this is you, you know, to a node ID, you put on a configuration, you know, whether that's like the initial configuration to set up like SSH, and maybe put an IP address on an interface for you to be able to connect to it. Put on, you know, some just day0 config. Angel says, similar to building a reserve lab in DevNet Sandbox. Exactly. I mean, to be honest, this is exactly how probably some of the labs are built out. I couldn't tell you for sure, but I wouldn't be surprised, like especially some of like the CSR ones. Like you can see like the CSR supported, and I'm sure there's plenty of other things that you can throw in here. But yeah, I mean, why not? The nice part is though, like, I know we're just talking about CML and labbing, but like this can apply to anything, right? Anything you create, any application. Like when I was doing the NetCheck application, or that project, I have, by the way, it's kind of work in progress. It's still alive. It's still alive and kicking. I built an API out on the back end to where anything you did through the web GUI, whether you wanted to run a set of tests against a specific device, you could make an API call to do that. So that way, if you, let's say you wanted to spin up a lab in CML and then run the NetCheck project against your lab, you could do that, right? You could just have your list of API calls, boom, 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 right? So it's pretty neat stuff. It's still like blowing my mind. Definitely like still learning, so I don't want to make it sound like I have it all figured out, but it's pretty sweet. So okay, you know what a good transition would be then? Let's take a look at the utility, the command line utility app. And the reason I want to go to this before I jump to the actual client software is this is diving more into some code, and I think we can get kind of fancy with this. And I want to take some time and like try to figure this one out, and have like a solid solution that we could build to, or an idea at least that we could build to. Whereas this one, I can just I see it more as like we can interact with the lab. This is definitely like, don't get me wrong, you can make a whole, you could have this included in, you know, a CI/CD check where you can say, okay, well, CML up, check, go to use this lab, console into this device, and then check this, and that, right? But because, you know, command line, I think it's gonna be easier to digest, at least for this stream. And then if we need to revisit it, we will. So, all right. So, I have a folder. Oh, I'll get rid of this. I have a folder already called CML2 API Fun. Yeah. So let's go into that real quick. And let me see. Version. Okay, so we are running 3.9.5. Probably should upgrade it, but that ain't happening right now. Let's do Python virtual environment. And we'll just call it CML VNV. So what it's gonna do is obviously create a virtual environment within this CML2 folder. Obviously, we'll initialize it as a Git repository. So any changes we make, we will just make a quick git init folder, or I'm sorry, git ignore, and we'll just say anything with v and v in it. There you go. All right, so that way it's not tracking. The whole point of this git ignore file obviously is to not track our virtual environment folder. All right, so before we move on, let's just activate our virtual environment. Okay, so we have the virtual environment up. Let's just do our first one. Actually, we don't even need a file. Yeah, it's just a command line utility. Okay, let's see though. Clone this repository. Okay. But I don't think we have to clone it though. Let's see. Yeah, I don't think we have to clone the virtual. Oh, you know why? I think we have to change in. We have to get the. That's what brings the utilities. We'll just do this. Just clone it. We'll follow the instructions. And then it was pip install. So we cloned it. Use pip or use setup. Yeah, I'm not using setup. that ain't happening. CML Utils. Okay. Oh wait, what? Hold on. Pip install CML Utils. Defaulting because normal site pack. What is going on, dude? Okay, so interesting. CML Utils also downloads the client as well. What's weird though is defaulting to user installation because normal site packages is not writable. Interesting. Pip list. What the heck? What is going on here? Yeah, this has like PyTS. Where is this coming from? Well, that was just weird. Let's deactivate this. I guess let me just remove the directory real quick. Python module VNV CML VNV. It's a nice part with virtual environments. You can just kind of throw them away, but it's just weird. What am I even doing here? Oh, source CML bin activate. Okay, so like what the heck? That's weird. Because it shouldn't have any... Oh, you know what? Oh no. I wonder if I installed all those packages on the yeah, like viral 2 clients here. But let me deactivate. Oh no. Pip list. Oh no. Everything. Oh no. I guess I didn't activate my virtual environment at some point in one of my my coding adventures, and I might have accidentally installed it on the user installation. So basically outside my virtual environment, which luckily, like, this is all in just a WSL container, so nothing crazy, but okay, good to know. Anyways, that's installed in my virtual. Let me just make sure. Pip install CML Utils. It's so weird too, because I don't know what would be locking up defaulting, because normal site packages is not writable. I don't know what would be doing that. So Angels asks indirect dependencies. No, that's what I initially thought. I was like, okay, did something, but like Flask, I'm pretty sure is in here. Yeah, like Flask, Flash Marshmallow. Yeah, like I just guarantee you that I did a pip install, used requirements txt, like had a requirements text file, and I used that very recently. Cause well, I mean, if I'm telling on myself, like you can see Genie version is 10.21. So that would have been sometime in October. I must have probably on stream not had one of my virtual environments activated and installed all of these packages on my user installation. So whatever, is what it is. That makes sense too why I okay, anyways, that's not anyone's problem here, that's my problem. Okay, so we have it installed in our virtual environment and our user global environment, but okay, there really isn't much to configure. Just set your CML credentials. There are a few different ways to accomplish this. The options listed below are in the preferred order. Okay, so viral .viralrc to the working directory. This will always be checked first, so let's just do that. I am going to quickly do this. I'm gonna just do this off stream, and like I said, it's a lab environment, so I'm not too worried about it, but it'll just be good not to, you know, throw that stuff around. Okay, so it's viral RC, new viral, new file, and oops, I must have not copied it right. Copy, paste, and then viral host equals, what is my viral host? 202. Cool. Okay, so that's done. Allows you to customize. This command will be passed to the host as well as the username. Nah, we don't need that. We will take this though and set it to false, because we don't need it to verify my SSL cert. If set in the configure in the environment, we'll assume the server is a CML2 plus. Yeah, that ain't me. I'm CML2 personal. And then there's no plugins. So, all right. All right. So understanding the precedents, blah blah blah. Okay. So I think we're ready. CML ls. Ooh. Just like that, we're already in. Check that out. So I'll tell you, I defined the following variables: the viral host, username, password, and the one that disables SSL. So this one I didn't equal. I just said equal to false, and so that way it doesn't verify SSL. And I can do that because I'm in a lab environment. So, but check that out: 3 nodes, 2 links, interfaces. I didn't even set a description for this Postman Lab. That's pretty neat. All right, let's see what other cool stuff can we do, right? 3 major benefits. Oh yeah. Easily use different credentials for various environments. Too bad I'm only gonna have one environment. Customize your lab.yaml files to include different tags configurations, and you have a badass workflow. Heck yeah. All right. CML ls. Oh, the list of commands are at the top. Here we go. Stop a lab, start a lab, console into a node, opens the workbench. All right. You know what? I actually like the one example workflow down here. CML ID, CML up. What's this one do? CML ID. Okay. I feel like I'm missing something. Yeah, I feel like I'm definitely missing something there. CML nodes. Okay. Here's a list of nodes in this lab. Oh, they might not be in an order either. That's something I guess I probably should consider. CML nodes. No lab selected. Okay. So I think it's, you know what? Let me quit cheating. Let me just figure it out. CML use. Let's see. Wipe a lab, telnet to a host, list the topologies available, save a local YAML file. Get the current lab title and ID. No. Use a lab launched elsewhere. Okay. So how about this? We're going to use a lab. Let me do CML lists. An existing lab ID to make the current lab. Okay. So easy enough. We'll do ID and we'll just say 4CAAD0. It's the one that started. Okay. CML ID. Now CML ID should now pop up with this lab, the first lab title. Boom. Okay. CML nodes. Oh. Oh. Okay. So let's just, out of curiosity, let's try to assign a. Let's assign a IP address. Just get rid of that. Let's do it to this guy because I'm already in his console. Let's just do a loopback. Loopback Loopback 0 is popular. Great. We'll just say 10111, and we'll just do a /32 mask. Just so, okay. Loopback 0, 10111 is in an up state. Okay, so we should see a loopback pop up here for iOS v-0. Interesting. Okay. Well, let's do this then. Let's just do 10.120.1. Do a /24. Oops. No shut. All right. So it's in an up state. Let's see if it finds it now. I just didn't know. The reason I went to a physical interface because I'm not sure if it finds virtual interfaces. I guess it doesn't find. So the only other thing I could think of is it created this viral folder here, this .viral. Oh, here it is. Here we go. Yeah. So what it did, okay, here we go. So what it did was it created a snapshot of the lab. Whenever I said use lab, it created a snapshot. But I bet if I wonder if I do, let's see what happens. CML ID. I don't know if this will work. No. How about this? Let's just delete it. Okay. There we go. Okay. So whenever I use the lab, it takes a snapshot and puts all the information in here. What's this one do? Oh, it's kind of the same thing. It puts in this .viral folder, which I'm assuming is what it uses to build these tables. Which makes sense. Otherwise, you would be doing like constant API calls to get this information. Just to make sure we know what we're dealing with. And, oh man, I did not mean to do it. I'll just type it next time. So theoretically, it says layer 3 addresses. It should pop up. If it doesn't, I have one other thought. Okay. Here's my other thought. Because we're only using gig 03, we'll just call this one 1030. Or no, 10.130 0.255. Oh, I can't do it. Oh my god. What the? Let's try that. Ganesh asks, do I use WSL1 or WSL2? Good question. I use WSL2. And that's actually the second Ganesh. So both Ganesh, well, I don't know if the first one's so Ganesh, well, man, I forgot. Both your last names start with a V. But both Ganeshes were here at one point. I don't know if the other one is still here as well, but yeah, I use WSL2. Okay, so let's see if this works without having to rebuild or, take another snapshot. Interesting. Okay, so the last thing I'm going to do, and then I'm going to try to move on and try out some other stuff, okay? Because I do want to try out a couple more commands. Wonder, because technically I'm still using the same lab. Oh, wow. Okay, so good point. So that .var folder, if you delete that, you have to do the use command again. Okay, so that's back up. Interesting. I wonder, the only other thing I can think of is if we have to have like both sides of a link up, right? So like gig 3's configured, but ETH2.1's not. And maybe that's the only reason, but either way. Luckily, because it's open, it's on GitHub, all the source code's on GitHub, I can, dive into a little bit to figure out what's up, but okay. We're not doing that though. What's this for? Oh, the installation guy. I can get rid of that. All right, so we have all the nodes. It's kind of interesting though, because okay, that has a label. That has an L3 access, but like I can't get to it. CML console branch router. Okay, so let's try something. The label is the name here, IOSV-0. CML. Oh my gosh. It's like I've CML console and then the name. Alright. CML console and then the name. IOSV-0. I don't know if this is gonna work. Oh my gosh. Oh no. Oh. Let me try this. Oh wow. Oh no. Oh, this is clean. Oh, this is nice. Okay, so wow. Okay, so I don't have to use the breakout tool. So the point of the breakout tool was the breakout tool allowed you to connect to multiple console connections at once, right? Because without any sort of additional tooling, the only way you could go between the consoles is if you clicked on the devices, which, to be honest, this actually works fine for me. So I'm not complaining in any way, but the breakout tool wasn't very straightforward. Like you had to download an executable file, and then run, like, there's a web server that ran, so you had to go to like localhost port 8080. Just felt like a lot of work to get a console connection to your CML device, right? But this, I like this. This is awesome. And I imagine if I go to a new bash shell, actually, let me see if I can just copy this one. Oh no, it's not that simple. I literally tried Control C, Control V. And we'll just, let me activate the virtual environment, and we'll do CML. Let's see. What was the command? CML console. Yeah, it's just CML console. IOSV. IOSV-0. Oh, you know what? Let me, yeah. Let me do CSR 1000V-0. CSR 1000V-0. Oh my gosh. Yeah, I was just thinking, I didn't set this up, the CSR yet, so. Oh, wow. Okay. This is the real deal then. This utility, this command line utility is awesome. Kudos to Hank and Joe Clark for creating this. This is great. Because essentially what I'm doing is, this is just like if I had like, I mean, obviously I'm in the VS Code terminal and I'm connected to an Ubuntu machine, but like if I had this this library installed on, you know, a Mac, another Linux machine, I don't know if it works with Windows, so I'm not going to say that, but you could have like iTerm or something, secure CR. The problem is you can't do secure CRT because you need the Python library, unless there's some way to activate it. Anyways, but if you have this Python library installed and you have your virtual environment up and running, you can open up as many tabs as you want. Like you see here, I'm in the IOSV router, right? And then here I'm in the CSR, right? You see IOSXE, yeah, unregistered. And then if you go to this show version, funny enough, I don't know if you can see it in the background here. Check this out. It's like one for one. That's awesome. Okay. Cool stuff. Okay. Let's look at, there's I think one other example I wanted to do, and then I'm gonna wrap it up. So we got the console. So that was a big thing, by the way, personally for me, having the ability to have multiple terminal tabs open and being able to get in the console without having to go into each device. As I mentioned, it wasn't like a that wasn't a deal breaker in any way with this, you know, with CML, because they did make it easier. As I tweeted out, Joe Clark, he put out a YouTube video, and that talked about, like, this is one of the new features with 2.2, I believe. I think it was 2.2, where you can click on the device, and assuming you have the open console selected there, that's how you can go between the devices. So not too bad, especially like if you're used to, like, even G does this as well, like if you have the HTML5 console. So pretty awesome, man. That's awesome. And then if you want to go, you know, the route that I just did, have multiple terminal windows with the Python library installed, you can do that as well. So that's clutch. Okay. So there's one other thing I wanted to do. Oh, yeah, this. CML generate PyATS. It also mentions about having PyATS installed. I don't think that's a problem because, oh, let me exit. Control C, quit. Oh no, am I stuck? Am I stuck in a loop? Quit. Oh no. Oh no, now I'm really stuck. Fine, I'll just open up another. I'm sure there's some sort of escape key that I just don't know. CML bin activate. All right, so let me just make sure I have PyATS installed. Guess I could have grepped it. Yeah, I mean it's 21.10, but that'll do. So PyATS is installed. So let's do something real quick. CML generate PyATS. Quickly turn into a testbed file. So I'm gonna do this backwards just to make sure that it works the way I'm thinking. So my assumption is we have to create a testbed file before we can use the PyATS features. And I'm thinking that holds true. IOSV-0. Yeah. And CML command, the host name, and then the actual command, right? CML command, host name, and the actual command. Okay, cool. So it should error out if my logic's right. Maybe not, though. Wow, okay. I was just thinking maybe not, because we technically already have I believe this isn't a PyATS format. This is like a CML lab format, right? Explaining the links and you know, the interfaces, the configuration. I mean, you can see here all the different configuration. So I guess you don't need that, but as we saw on Tuesday, there is an API call. So let's just generate a testbed file. There you go. Your terminal server, IOSV, CSR 1000. All that was built out of the box, right? Just running that one command. And we looked at this. I don't want to, you know, repeat, but, you know, build out the topology using the different interfaces. That's awesome. Just right out of the gate, dude. Okay, so what we did learn, though, is you don't need to have this command. I'm sorry, you don't have to have PyATS installed to run this. Well, I take it back. You have to have PyATS installed to run the command, but you don't have to have a testbed created, a PyATS testbed. Like I said, I'm pretty sure that's probably the way, because you don't need too many of the, I know that testbed was kind of big, but you don't need all those parameters to be able to make a bare bones testbed, a PyATS testbed. So there's a good chance that it just takes the data from that .viral folder that I showed you, the YAML file, and it just picks apart the data points it needs to create like a bare bones testbed or device object. And then it uses PyATS and Genie to, under the hood, to execute the commands. Well, I guess Genie, you know, used to parse. So I see it as kind of like using the execute method for on a device object to execute these commands and then produce unstructured data back. So that's kind of where I see how they're using PyATS. So test operational aspects, yeah. It's interesting too that these nodes do not have to have externally reachable or have any IP connectivity. Well, based on our testbed file, it's most likely due to this terminal server here. And it looks like the terminal server is actually like, because this is the IP address of my of the CML VM itself. So there must be like a little terminal server that kicks on. Obviously, I didn't create these username or password. All this was, I guess, just generated under the hood. But I bet this is connected. So as long as you have IP connectivity to the VM, which obviously you do because you started the lab and you started the devices and you can like interact with it at a web UI level, you connect to this, and then I guess from here, this acts as like a proxy to all your other devices, which allows for that console connectivity. Yeah, open, and then the lab ID, and then the device, and then 0, which I imagine is probably the console interface. I don't think. Let's see. Doesn't really say. Anyways, I'm just trying to connect dots at this point, but you kind of get my point, though. That's very cool. This is a very cool feature. Probably very undermined as well, because like no one really thinks of, okay, I have to, like, my initial thought was, and I think I even mentioned it Tuesday, was I wasn't going to use the breakout tool. I was going to just add an external node, which is basically like a bridge to my home network, to where I can give it, have these access my home network, and I would just have the external node connect to all three, right? So instead of doing that now, I can basically use CML as a proxy and just connect to all of them using this utility. I mean, obviously, I'll probably just use this web UI as I like test things out or get things initially set up. But at the end of the day, I could create a script that does all this for me, and maybe runs this utility tool to generate a test bed or run specific show commands. So that's pretty awesome. I'll give this a solid A+. Solid A+. I think this is a very neat tool. Oh, we didn't even try the configure. Let's try this real quick. Let's see. So we'll just steal the command, right? CML command config name of the host name. So iOS v-0 SNMP server, I think location, and I'll just say my lab. All right. So this dash config means we're going to be sending in some configuration, and SNMP server is a very, non-impacting global config. So let's see if it works. And then as that's working, check that out. There it is. So I will tell you this. One, very cool feature. Two, I know for a fact that they are most likely using PyATS under the hood to also do the configuration piece. The reason I know that is because of these initial commands. So PyATS by default issues a series of commands, mostly to, since everything's programmatic, a lot of these commands are just for readability and easier parsing, right? So that we don't have too many parsing errors. So like no logging console, line console 0, exec timeout. I was gonna say there's also a, that might only be for show commands. A term length command. And so that's pretty cool. This is pretty neat. This is, you guys, if you've tuned in for a while, I admire the PyATS and Genie libraries a lot. It takes a while to really understand them, and they're very heavy. I will say, if you're just trying to run a couple of show commands or get some parse data back, probably not the libraries for you, because there's other libraries out there that, but I would advise you to take a look at Genie if you are interested in kind of parsing out data. But PyATS, offers a testing infrastructure and a bunch of other tools, a bunch of other features. So very cool that they have it integrated with this CML Utils library. All right, let's just like I said, I'm going to skip over the NSO piece. So the last thing I'm going to do, let's just generate an Ansible. Sorry, I was just reading here. An Ansible inventory file. So CML generate Ansible, and then output file name. Okay. CML generate Ansible output, and we'll call it Ansible inventory.yaml. Well, That's interesting. Let's take out the output and see what happens. That looks, but wait, no. Interesting. Okay, so Ansible inventory, no go. Let me, before I kind of call it, quickly turn your simulation return. Both INI formats are supported by the tool. Oh, I'm an idiot. Well, no, it says it defaults to YAML. Let me just give it one more go here. Style, INI. Nothing. Interesting. Okay. So, do I call it a bug? I don't know. Haven't really, it doesn't work for me, but I have to look at this a little further. It doesn't say it says it doesn't need anything else. No other dependencies. So, Ansible group tags. Yeah, I mean, we don't even have an inventory. The node will not be. Oh, that's why you read all the way through. If the Ansible group tag is not specified for a node, that node will not be included during inventory generation. Additionally, CML needs to know each node's management IP before it will be placed into an inventory file. Okay, so that is good to know. That there has to be, you have to create an Ansible group or tag it with an Ansible group. Take it back. Create a tag called Ansible group and apply it to the device. And then it will be included. Just because I can. I don't know if this is gonna work. What's this one? The ISV. Oh no, it did. It must have like a sim link or something. Okay. Let's try it. No. Okay. I'm just trying to get rid of this. I didn't mean to. That was wrong of me. That was kind of cheesy. I need to define it actually in the I have to define it in the lab and add the tag to it. I was trying to, like, this is like a cached version, and like ignore that little piece there. I was just trying to see if I can kind of trick it, but anyways. You get the idea, though. You can easily create. You just have to add a tag called Ansible group, and it will be included in your Ansible inventory. So, NSO, told you I was just gonna skip on that, and then local development, linting, and testing. Nice job, nice work, Hank and Joe. Crushed it. Very cool. I would highly recommend this to anyone that's just getting into CML. I'll most likely put this out, tweet this out after this stream, so that way if you want to take a look at it, obviously, watch the stream on playback or whatnot, and you can also go through what I just did right here and take it for a whirl yourself. So cool. I guess I'm gonna start wrapping up. Is there any questions? Anyone in the chat? Hopefully this is kind of helpful. I know like not everyone has CML or took advantage of any of the sales with it, but hopefully this is kind of opening your eyes to like what CML can offer. It seems like, just based on what I've based on what I've tested with it so far, it's well documented. It's heavy Cisco, obviously. So if you're trying to test other network vendors, then I would suggest sticking with like an even G. But it's out of the box. It just works. It's well documented. It has, this CLI utility, this Python library here that, as you can see, it works great. The API, awesome. So no complaints so far. I'm actually, kind of thrilled with it. So I guess if there's no questions, you know where to find me on Twitter. I am going to try to, just as a heads up for the next stream, just in case I don't mention it, I probably will, but I plan on updating OBS this weekend. OBS is the piece of software that kind of makes the stream possible. So hopefully, supposedly there's like a new YouTube integration with it, and I don't know whether it's going to make the stream better or worse or whatnot, but I'll try to make a note of it before we start on Tuesday. So that way, if you find that the stream is lower quality or if there's any sort of issues, just let me know. But I appreciate everyone joining tonight. And as always, if you have questions, I'm on Twitter at DevNetDan. That's the best way to get a hold of me. You feel free to tweet at me, or you can DM me as well. But that's all I have for tonight. I appreciate you guys being here, and I hope you all have a great weekend, and I will catch you on next Tuesday. All right. Peace.
Hold me close till I get up. Time is barely on our side. I don't wanna waste what's left. The storms we chase are leading us, and love is all we'll ever trust. Yeah, no, I don't wanna waste what's left. And on we'll go, through the wastelands, through the highways, till my shadow turns to sun rays. And on we'll go, through the wastelands, through the highways, and on we'll go. Finding life along the way, melodies we haven't played. No, I don't want no rest. Echoing around these walls, fighting to create a song. I don't wanna miss a beat. And on we'll go, through the wastelands, through the highways, till my shadow turns to sun rays. And